Hey y'all, welcome to Sandy's Library. I'm Sandy, and in this video I'm going to read you some more of my book, If I Had Married You. And as a friendly reminder, this is not a professional production, it's just an author reading her book. So let's get started. Part 4, Promotions, Progeny, and PCSing. Chapter 7. About 10 days after you left, my boobs got sore, and I knew what that meant. My period was on the way. I consoled myself with the notion that now wasn't really a good time. If I'd gotten pregnant right now, I would worry, and so would you. And what if I had to go on bed rest? It made so much more sense if it didn't happen until after you came back. Maybe even after the first of the year. So I could finish out the school year, then resign. I did want to raise our children. That is, if we ever had any. A few days later, when my period still hadn't shown up, yet my boobs were getting sorer by the day, so I went to get myself a pregnancy test. I decided to go to a drugstore off-post because, well, let's face it, Army posts are notorious gossip mills. If anyone we knew saw me buying a pregnancy test, congratulations would get back to you before I could get home to even take the test. And I couldn't have that. If this test was going to turn out negative, which I fully expected, I didn't want you knowing about it. No use in both of us being disappointed. But, as you know, that test was positive, which in part explained my erratic behavior right after you left. I attributed it to hormone overload, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. It was hard not saying anything when you called a couple of days after I took the test, but I wanted to tell you in person. I also wanted to see the doctor first to confirm the pregnancy and to make sure that everything was all right. Just killing me paranoid. A few days later, I got confirmation from the doctor who, after 2 days of blood tests, assured me that my HCG levels were climbing, which indicated a viable pregnancy. Only then did I allow myself to imagine the possibilities. I'd love to claim credit for the clever way I ended up telling you, but alas, it was not my idea, not entirely anyway. The day before you and Steve were scheduled to return home on Halloween, Samantha and I were at the snack bar in our kitchen eating coffee cake. I had forgotten the coffee, my favorite orange juice, in light of my newfound situation. So there I was, trying to figure out some ingenious way to tell you about our good fortune when Samantha asked, "So, you want to make it memorable, right?" I nodded and shrugged. I'd like a cool little story to tell the baby when he or she's older. I'd had numerous blood tests over the past couple of weeks, all with increasing HCG levels, so I'd managed to mostly squash my fears of a repeat from last summer. "Well," Samantha chuckled, "if it's a boy, he ain't gonna care about this story." She rolled her eyes and shook her head. "Yeah," I said as it hit me, "any son that we'd ever have would probably end up being a gung-ho soldier." I looked at Samantha and laughed as I added, "I'm kidding myself if I think any son that we might have will ever be anything but a soldier." "Guess if you want your own son," Samantha said, "you'll have to have two." "Hold on," I raised my hand. "Let's figure out how to tell him about this one before you go get me knocked up again." Then we both laughed. Samantha's gaze wandered off into a place where only she could go, leaving her with a soft smile. She stayed in that private place of hers for a while, and I didn't have the heart to tear her away. Finally, she glanced back at me, saying, "I've always had this," her words paused, as if she were searching for the right ones. Finally, she said, Well, I have this idea that I wouldn't tell Steve so much as show him. I looked down at my very flat belly, then back up to Samantha and asked, "You want me to wait until I'm showing?" She laughed at me, not with me. "Girl, sometimes I worry about you," she said, amusing herself further at my expense. But she didn't mean anything by it. Samantha has no problems laughing at herself, and she does often. She knows more blonde jokes than anyone I know. Plus, she's a natural blonde. She said to me, "You remember what tomorrow is, don't you?" We both knew the answer to that. It was Halloween, and you were coming home. With a devilish grin, Samantha added, "Give him a Halloween present he'll never forget." A Halloween present. Now she was talking. At that very moment, I began envisioning giving you the small gift box, something glittery and orange, and then I waited, trying to imagine your face as you discovered what was inside. But what was inside? A note? Well, that could be romantic. I wanted something with imagery. I wanted to see instant surprise and hopefully joy on your face the second the lid came off. So, the contents inside had to be something to do with a baby. It had to be bold and in your face. That's how I found myself standing, half naked in the doorway of our bedroom, amid all those red balloons, white candles, and red and white rose petals that I'd placed strategically around the house to welcome you home. And I was wearing my slinky outfit and holding that glittery little orange box in my hand when you walked through the door. After a fiery welcome home kiss, I pushed myself away from you and said, "I have something for you." I gestured toward the glittery box I found at the PX. "Sweetie," you said, "you didn't have to do that." You shook your head while gazing at me like you hadn't seen me in ages. "I don't have anything for you," you added while deciding whether or not to accept my gift. "It's okay," I assured you. "Besides, you've already given me something." You eyed the box as you took it. Then you glanced back up at me, shrugged and said, "Okay, let's get this out of the way. I have plans for you, young lady. I hear your husband's out in the field." You teased me with a wink as you lifted the lid. And you kept your gaze stilled on me. I needed you to look at the box, so I said, "Eyes on the prize, soldier." Then I glanced down at the box, hoping you'd follow my lead. You did. I looked on as you peeled back the pink and blue tissue paper, and then your smile practically reached all the way up to touch your eyes. That I knew was the exact second when you saw them, the tiny little booties in a pretty shade of spring green. Your gaze lifted to meet mine, and after a second or two, you asked in a fragile tone, "Are you?" Your gaze fell to my belly and stayed there for a good 30 seconds. When your eyes lifted to meet mine again, you asked in an unwavering tone, "Are you pregnant?" "I am," I nodded and waited for you to say something, anything. But you didn't speak. You just stood there looking at me. So I added, "Apparently, you army types are good at hitting your targets." In an instant, I was in your arms again, but your joy was overshadowed by fear as you gazed down at me. "Is everything okay? Have you been to the doctor yet?" I don't know how you did it, but you kept your voice on a cool, even keel. But your eyes told the tale. You were thinking the same thing I had been thinking when I first found out. What if it happens again? I nodded and smiled, wanted to ease your worry. I couldn't let it go on another second. "Yes," I said, "I've been to the doctor and everything's okay." And I didn't have to say it, but we both knew that I meant for now. Because, realistically, until they could detect a heartbeat, and it was a little too early for that, anything could happen. I could see in your eyes that it was taking some time to compose your thoughts, So I waited, and finally you began nodding as you said, "Okay, that's good." You glanced down at my belly. "We're just going to keep positive thoughts. This baby is going to be fine." You cupped my face in your hands and then kissed me, really laying one on me. "Wow," I said, and I'm sure my voice was weak. I should let you knock me up more often. Chapter 8. The next day, we made another appointment with the doctor for the following week to appease your concerns, and then it hit me, morning sickness. It came upon me like a rogue wave, gigantic and from out of nowhere. The thing I remember most about that time is the way you'd kneel beside me while I was hugging the toilet. You'd hold my hair back with one hand and rub my shoulders quietly with the other. And when I was done puking my guts out, you dampened a washcloth with hot water to clean and soothe my face with soft, gentle caresses. I was so sick that we ended up going in before my appointment with the doctor. They gave me something for the nausea and sent me for an ultrasound. This time, to our delight, they detected a heartbeat. That was the first time I had started to feel like I could truly trust that the baby I was carrying would be okay. I'd been telling myself for weeks that our new little peanut was going to be okay. Now I felt I had proof. I'd gotten dehydrated from all the puking, so they put me in the hospital overnight to fill me with fluids. I didn't like that. I wanted to go home, where you were. You did a very good job of appeasing me, though, by sitting with me until I fell asleep. To your credit, you were there when I woke up the next morning. I would never have known you'd left if you hadn't told me. You were smiling when I opened my eyes, and that let me know everything was going to be okay. Instinctively, I touched my belly, as if I could protect this child. You rose from your chair to kiss me and then said, with a little luck, "You're going to get to go home today, darling." "Really?" I asked. You said, "I talked to the doctor on the way in this morning. Just a quick blood test to check your HCG levels. If he likes what he sees, you can go home." Your grin filled me with hope, but this feeling of impending doom and gloom lingered in the shadows. Now I wouldn't feel better until I had a blood test, showing that my HCG level was climbing. The same thing was bugging you. I could see it in your eyes. But you said in a soothing voice, "I'll be back after PT to take you home." I reached for your hand. "Babe, if you need to stay at work, it's okay." I gave your hand a squeeze. "I can get Samantha to give me a ride." "It's okay," you said. "I've already cleared it with Captain Hayden. But I do have to go back to work." I knew you were trying to hide whatever was going on inside you, but I saw it there in your eyes when you asked, "Think Samantha can hang out with you today?" You were worried, just like me. So I laughed. "I think you'll have a hard time driving her away." I was released from the hospital later that morning. You went back to work, and I spent the day lounging in our bed while Samantha waited on me hand and foot. By the time you returned that evening, a few minutes after 6, what I really wanted was to get up out of bed, especially when the smell of Chinese food followed you into the house. I pushed myself up against our bed's headboard, and that's about as far as Samantha was willing to let me go. She began shaking her finger, and her head soon followed as she said, "Oh no, Missy, I have strict orders from the lieutenant down there." She laughed, pointing toward the first floor of the house. "You're on bed rest." "But I'm okay. The baby's okay. Doc said so." I pled my case. "It was just morning sickness. They gave me something for it. Now I'm over it, and I want to get up." Suffice it to say, I didn't get up that evening. I waited patiently for you to bring me a plate while Samantha said her goodbyes, informing me that she'd drop by on her lunch break tomorrow. I've always loved Chinese food, but the memory of the food you brought home that day has left a lasting impression upon me. Maybe it's the way you fixed my plate for me that evening and brought it to me on a tray. Or maybe it's the way you fixed your own plate and brought it into our bedroom, where we ended up picnicking on our beds since I wasn't supposed to get up. And I could tell just from the look in your eyes and the way you chatted with me about everything and nothing all at the same time while we ate our dinner. You were right where you wanted to be with me, and I looked bun in the oven. You seem to be awfully sick, my love, you said to me. Are the doctors sure everything's okay? I was a little afraid to talk about the baby as far as making plans for the future go, but it seemed to be something that interested you, so I tempted fate and went with it. Yeah, I nodded. Apparently morning sickness is a sign of a healthy pregnancy. I couldn't help but laugh. It's payback for that whole apple thing. You laughed instantly, and I knew you got that I was talking about Eve in the Garden of Eden. Your sense of humor is one of the things that I love dearly about you. It's definitely gotten us through some tough times. Lord knows we've had our share. Here's the thing you said, picking at your food. It took you a minute, but you finally glanced up at me. You peered at me anxiously when you said, if you needed to be on bed rest, they would say so, right? Yes, babe, they would. I knew what your problem was, and I wanted to set your mind at ease right away. Everything's fine. I don't want you to worry. Everything is going as planned. I looked at you. I just need to be very diligent about what I'm doing from here on out. I shrugged. I just don't want to do anything to jeopardize this baby. You looked at me and asked cautiously, do you think it's wise for you to work while you're pregnant? I said, well, the doctor said as soon as I'm feeling better, it'll be fine for me to go back to work. What about after you have the baby? You looked at me in such a way that I couldn't be mad at you. Your eyes were questioning and your tone was telling. I guess we've never really talked about this, but is your career that important to you? You asked. I tried to play it cool, not let my feelings show. Some women would have been offended. Others would have been relieved to find out their working days were numbered. And me, I was weighing my options. Sure, I was enjoying teaching. It was, after all, the profession I had chosen. But, if given the opportunity, wouldn't I rather stay home with my children? I glanced up at you with a slight smile curling on my mouth. Well, the paycheck is important to me, I said with a hint of laughter, because it was true. Most people don't work for the fun of it. They work out of necessity. I asked, do you think our budget can handle a single income? I shrugged. Well, it'd be great to be a stay-at-home mom when the time came, but could we afford it? A few seconds passed, and they felt like eons before you responded with a slight shrug. I won't lie and say that will make no difference, but as long as we live on post and we don't make too many unnecessary purchases, we should be okay. Then you added with confidence, we'll have what our family needs. I could always offer piano and voice lessons here at the house, I found myself saying. Plus, I could really use the free time to take care of my stuff here on post. I'd already decided a long time ago, if only subconsciously, that if I ever carried a baby to term, I'd want to be the one raising our child. The notion had been weighing on me ever since I'd lost the baby back in the summer. If I carried this baby to term, when this school year was over, so was my teaching career. I had to make a choice, and I chose to concentrate my efforts on doing whatever I could to help you succeed, and, God willing, I'd get to raise our children in the process. After all, the higher in rank you climbed, the more money you'd make, which in turn benefited our budding little family. And the extra money that I'd bring in from piano and voice lessons would help with the family budget. So really, the decision was a win-win for both of us. Are you sure? You tried to sound neutral, but there was something in your voice. You wanted this. You said, "I wasn't expecting this sort of responsibility to fall into your lap this early in the game, and you've been a champion about it." Your smile as you brushed my bangs out of my face. "But you're right. It would be easier on you if you quit working full time. But that's your decision, darling. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. But it's better for you, for your career, if I play ball, right?" You hesitated, then said, "Honestly, yes it is." "Then that's what I'm going to do," I shrugged. "Besides, I want to raise our children, not some babysitter." I guess we both had come to terms with how we wanted our future to proceed. You and a wife, whose main priorities were the children and your career. I was determined to be both of those. Those first few weeks were filled with a flurry of doctor appointments until a pack of them were satisfied with the viability of this pregnancy. For most couples, those first weeks are accompanied by this internal fear, especially after they've already had a miscarriage. It's that aching feeling that resides deep down inside your gut during those first weeks when you're not sure if this baby is going to survive. It's not until about the 15th or 16th week when you've got a noticeable baby bump and those little flutters you've been feeling have turned into obvious little kicks and punches. Only then do you start to feel a measure of confidence that this baby might just make it to term. That happened for us after the holidays. By January, it was noticeable to everyone that I was with child. Things were definitely starting to look up for you and me. Chapter 9. After the holidays, my doctor ordered an ultrasound when I hit 16 weeks. As we drove to the appointment, we were filled with hope and wonder. By the time the appointment was over, we'd know the sex of our baby, if we were lucky. It was something we both wanted, but for very different reasons. I wanted to know the sex because I preferred to use pink or blue as the major color in the nursery. You, on the other hand, simply wanted confirmation that you were getting yourself a son. I knew you wanted a boy. I also knew you wouldn't be disappointed if the baby turned out to be a girl. The only difference would be that you'd see our son as your little soldier in training while you'd become our daughter's protector. We arrived at the appointment 10 minutes early, just enough time for me to start fidgeting. You squeezed my hand, leaned toward my ear, and whispered, "Don't worry, sugar, a little peanut's just fine." I said, "I know," and I glanced into your eyes. "You won't be too awfully disappointed if it's a girl, will you?" You chuckled, drew my hand up to your mouth, and kissed it. "Darling," you said, "as long as we have a healthy baby, I will feel incredibly blessed either way." I practically sighed the word out. Good. You looked at me with curious eyes. "Are you getting a feeling?" I shook my head. "Honestly," I said, "I have no idea. I'd been so fixated on the baby's health that I hadn't even thought much about it being a boy or a girl. But now that I thought about it, I could see arguments for both." When we were called back for our doctor's appointment, you kept your hand on the small of my back as we followed PFC Hogan down the hallway to a door marked 2541. She opened the door and smiled as she said, "Captain Holbrook will be right with you." You said, "Thanks." And within a few minutes the doctor came in. After a brief round of pleasantries, I laid back on the table where she readied the sonogram machine. I winced when she put the cold goop on my belly, which freaked you out. So I said with a laugh, "It's cold." You laced your fingers with mine and winked at me. As Captain Holbrook ran the machine's wand over my belly, you wrapped my hand in both of yours, then propped your elbows on your knees and rested my fingers against your lips while you stared at the monitor. The doctor pointed at the baby's beating heart. "Look at that. Nice strong heartbeat." I felt you saying, "Good, good," as you kissed the tops of my fingers and patted my hand. She began moving the wand around, going from one side to the other several times. Finally, the baby moved a leg, giving the captain a clear shot. She said victoriously, "There you are." You asked, "Can you tell what it is?" She looked at you. "You have a preference, Lieutenant?" Your dark skin hid your blush pretty well, but I could tell, so I said with a hint of laughter, "He's counting on a boy." "Well, Lieutenant," she said, dragging it out, "this is your lucky day." "Are you serious?" Hope poured out in your voice. "It's a boy?" "That it is." She pointed to his genitals, which, once she pointed them out, it was obvious. She went on to push some buttons on the machine, then removed the wand from my belly and wiped the goop off with paper towels. "I'll give you two a minute." She looked at me, adding, "You can get dressed now. I'll bring you a picture for your baby book." Our baby's first picture. My heart swelled with delight. First thing I wanted to do when we left the post medical center was go buy a baby book at the PX. As you maneuvered the car out of the parking space, I asked, "Do you have time to drop by the PX?" I looked at the sonogram picture, then back up at you. "I want to get a baby book." You said, "Sure, babe, whatever you want. I don't have to go back to work until after lunch." At the PX, while I was checking out the baby books, you came around the corner saying, "Check this out." I glanced up to see you holding an army camo onesie. You said, "I want this to be his first outfit." And this was way before camo became popular with the masses too. I laughed and shook my head as you placed the onesie inside our cart. Samantha's prediction bounced around in my head as we left the PX. Her words kept repeating in my thoughts. "Guess if you want your own son, you'll have to have two." Another baby, I thought. Maybe in 2 or 3 years. The more I thought about it, the more I found that idea appealing. Before heading home, we picked up tacos and burritos for lunch. You tucked me into a blanket on the couch and brought me my tacos and a glass of orange juice on a tray. I'll confess, I've always loved the way you pamper me, whether I was pregnant or not. But while I was pregnant, it might have been hormones or something, but your doting on me always made me feel special. That evening, when we were lying in bed, you draped yourself across my belly and propped yourself up on one elbow. With your free hand, you caressed my emerging baby bump. After a moment, you glanced up at me and grinned. "My son is growing inside you." I reached up and trailed my fingers down the side of your face. "I'm glad it's me," I said. "I'd be heartbroken if it wasn't me." "So would I, baby," you said. "So would I." You made your way up to kiss me, to let me know you were quite satisfied with where you'd planted your seed. "What are we going to name our little peanut?" I asked, mostly just to tease you. You grinned, playing along, saying, "You have to ask." I chuckled a little. "I suppose we have a little junior on our hands then." I said in such a way that you instantly knew I wanted our little peanut to be a junior. I've always considered myself to be incredibly fortunate to call you my husband. So, if you wanted to name our firstborn son after yourself, then that's what we'd do. I knew by then, as well as most of the wives on post, that you were one of a kind and you belonged to a select group of men. The numbers were small, but all of you are 100% committed to your families. When you weren't in the field or deployed, every evening after work, you'd come directly home to me. There was no going out with the boys. Naturally, there was the occasional military function during the evening, but most of those I also attended. I'm well aware that I am, and always have been, one of the lucky wives. As my tummy grew, every evening after dinner, you'd sit with me. Early on, it was mostly on the couch, but in the latter stages of my pregnancy, I was more comfortable lying in bed, where you'd rub my belly while chatting with our son. I loved that you told him all about his mommy and daddy and his extended family, from both sets of grandparents down to his aunts and uncles. With our combined siblings, 2 brothers and a sister on my side, and a brother and a sister on yours, our little junior was going to have plenty of aunts and uncles around, and, with luck, they'd give him some cousins sooner rather than later. The way you treated us, not just me, but us, while I was pregnant, let me know that you were going to be an excellent father. Believe me, I've always known since day one just how fortunate Junior and I were to have you in our lives. Things had started out a little rough for you and me, but I was really liking our life together these days, and I was looking forward to growing old with you.